Our guest says Canada must implement stronger trade policies, especially on steel, before it's too late to save this country's domestic steel industry. We're joined by Lourenco Gonclaves, CEO of Cleveland-Cliffs, a major U.S. steel producer. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure to be with you, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
You have applauded President Trump's tariffs, and you think Canada needs to do far more to stop steel being dumped, as you put it, in this country, particularly from China. Give us your thesis there, please.
I'll be glad. First of all, when I talk tariffs, I'm talking steel tariffs, I'm talking Section 232 tariffs. These are tariffs that are related to national security. It's a national security matter for a country, a developed country, to have the ability to produce its own steel. That's what President Trump is doing in the United States. Is that what we would like to have Prime Minister Carney doing for Canada as well, to protect and make sure that the Canadian domestic industry is able to sell steel into the Canadian domestic market.
But isn't that questionable? Because President Trump says if we're going to have a defense industry, we need our own steel. But according to the reports I've read, U.S. defense industry uses only about 3% of American steel. So there's plenty of steel in America to build tanks and guns. Isn't that just an excuse, this national security thing?
That's not. And the counterexample for what you have just said is what the UK did. The UK killed their own domestic steel industry by selling half to India and the other half to China. And now they are paying the price. Canada is going the same direction. We are trying to avoid that to happen. If you can't produce your own steel, if you're just melting scrap, you are limited in what you can produce, and you will not be able to do the 3% that you have just said. So the 3% needs the other 97%. And in Canada, you have a situation, Andrew, that's totally unusual in the entire world. 65% of import penetration is an absurd. With 25% here in the United States, we initiated Section 232. That was 9 years ago. And now we have a situation that's sustainable in terms of Section 232 tariffs. Canada needs to do the same.
Canada has put on some levies, targeting in particular steel that comes from China. You feel this country should do more?
It's necessary to block also the countries that are flooded with Chinese steel. China at this point floods the entire world. So if you don't block the 53 countries that Canada has free trade agreements, there's nothing you can do about. So the problem right now is not directly China into Canada. It's Japan, it's South Korea, it's Vietnam, it's the Europeans, it's pretty much everybody, because 100% allowance for the 2024 import levels, it means that what happened last year in the Canadian domestic market is okay. And it's not okay. 65% import penetration is totally crazy, and we cannot have a domestic industry with this level of import penetration. The Canadian market should be served by Canadian steel companies with steel produced with Canadian workers.
You, of course, Cleveland-Cliffs bought Stelco, one of our steel makers, not so long ago. And so, of course, Stelco, it's an odd situation, isn't it? You do support U.S. tariffs. However, Stelco will be hurt by that. It can't move steel into the U.S. market.
Not true. I acquired Stelco in November of 2024, Andrew. And one of my first measures was to make sure that Stelco, the steel company of Canada, would sell steel into Canada. That was directed by me in November, before the new administration took office. So way before tariffs were implemented. But keep in mind, Section 232 tariffs, national security tariffs, are different from the generic tariffs associated with fentanyl or other reasons. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a decision that the Canadian government needs to make. Do you want to have a domestic Canadian steel industry, yes or no? If the answer is yes, we got to do what the United States did, because overcapacity doesn't happen by chance. Overcapacity happens by design. Canada was allowing for this overcapacity to come to Canada because Canada had a very easy escape valve. Let's sell into the United States. We have currency advantage, we have healthcare cost advantage, we have a lot of other things that are advantageous in Canada, and the U.S. market was open. Not anymore. So that's a new world under Section 232 here in the U.S. These tariffs are not going away, and Canada needs to protect Canadian business, Canadian steel mills, Canadian workers. That's what I'm asking for.
I couldn't quite understand, though, what you said, though, because Stelco, we make steel in Ontario. Surely that steel is subject to a tariff when it goes into the U.S. market. I mean, the Ontario Premier, as you know, you may have seen this, is apparently mad with you, says he wants to give you an earful because you backed Mr. Trump's tariffs. Isn't Stelco going to be hit by these U.S. import levies?
I can talk about Premier Doug Ford in another day because I don't want to distract from the main message. Doug Ford is very good to insult in public and apologize in private. So we spoke on the phone, and he apologized to me. And I'm glad that he called me when I was in my car with my driver. And my driver was a witness because I take my calls on a loudspeaker. But I will be glad to debate Doug Ford on national television if you want. But let's talk about that in another day, another opportunity. At this point, we have a decision to make. And the decision to make is the Carney administration willing to have a domestic steel industry to produce steel in Canada, yes or no? Because if the answer is no, I know what to do. But if the answer is yes, I'm telling what I believe is the rational, normal, very middle-of-the-road position to make sure that we only allow 20% of imported levels of 2024, not 100%. This is not just my position. That's also the position of other producers, including the Canadian Steel Producers Association. So it's time that we need to be heard, or we're going to take individual decisions that will be regretted for a long, long time.
What about the thesis that we, Canada and the US, should just link arms and be just one entity as regards steel, blocking dumping from outside North America?
That's exactly what we are proposing. I believe that once we do, and I believe that will be once we do, not if we do. I have the full belief that the Carney administration will do the right thing. But once Prime Minister Carney implements the measures that we are advocating, Canada will be replicating exactly what we are doing in the United States, blocking imports based on national security. Then we have a fortress U.S.-Canada, and then we go from there. That's a good basis to start negotiating the renewal of the what you guys call CUSMA, and we call USMCA, right. Just without the M, just USMCA.
Can I ask you, I mean, just to be devil's advocate here, one of my favorites, somebody's paying a price for these Mr. Trump's tariffs. U.S. steel users are paying higher prices. You guys, Steel Dynamics, both have told investors, yeah, we're getting more for our steel. So the cost of protectionism is that, according to the New York Times, American-made steel is now the most expensive in the world. So there's a real cost there.
Well, not really. Not really. If you have ever visited a steel mill, and I believe you did sometime in your professional career, if not, you are invited to visit Stelco with me. You will see the amount of fixed cost investment to just put a mill in place and to operate the mill. So we need the volume to dilute those fixed costs. So there's not a sequential increase in prices. Yeah, we repriced up once the Section 232 tariffs were implemented. Since then, prices are actually going down, not up. Even more important, the clients that buy from Cleveland-Cliffs steel in a long-term basis and big volumes, we're the largest supplier of the automotive industry. I have been extending 2 and 3 years fixed price to these clients. So said another way, car manufacturers buying from Cleveland-Cliffs now have at their choice 3-year fixed price or 2-year fixed price, no inflation. Because I believe that the next thing that the market and the pundits will say is that we're increasing prices and creating inflation. Not true. These prices are fixed and locked for the next 3 years. I'm betting that what President Trump is doing here in the United States will bring manufacturing back to the country. We are going to have more volume, and that more volume will compensate for prices that are not going to go up at will. I believe that Canada can and will do the same thing.
It's a fascinating. We've heard, but you're not the only one who said perhaps we should form a steel bloc, Canada and the US. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. Please take my offer. Come to see Stelco. I would love to see you.
I would love to come down to Selco. I've often driven past it and saw the flames going in the distance and thought, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to check it out. Lourenco Gonclaves, CEO of Cleveland Cliffs.